Hi everyone, this is your Shafeek sir. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today also I'm going to explain the one of the important topic for the intermediate first year students purpose. What is called the concept of the rent. So different types of the rent concepts is there. Today I am going to clearly explain about the how many types of the rent is there. What is the concepts of the rent is there. Okay, let us discuss that everyone. What is the concept of rent? So first of all we have to know about the what is the meaning of rent. Rent is the reward for the services of the land, machinery, tools, buildings. Rent is the reward. So generally rent is the rent is the reward. It is given Rent is the reward for the services for the services of the land, machinery, tools, building. That is called the rent. Okay, so rent is the reward. Rent is the reward for the services of the land, machinery, tools, building. So rent are the different types. Rent are three types. Okay, first one scarcity rent, quasi rent, transfer of earnings. Transfer of earnings. So first one, what is called the scarcity rent. Scarcity rent defined by Alfred Marshall. According to him, rent is depends on demand of the land and supply of the land. So scarcity rent explained by the Alfred Marshall. Alfred Marshall. Listen here, mom. The rent is depends upon the demand of the land and supply of the land. So generally, when the population increases, land demand also increases. Land supply cannot increase because land has inelastic. So owners get the more rent due to the scarcity of the land. So generally, when the population increases, population increases, so land demand, land demand also increases. But land has the inelastic demand. Inelastic demand. Inelastic demand means when the land demand increases, the land supply cannot be changes, nor the increases nor the decreases. That's why land has the inelastic demand. So there is no change in the demand. There is no change in the supply. So then owners get the more rent from the tenants. Okay, so owners get more rent due to the scarcity of land. scarcity of land. So simply I will explain about that scarcity rent. So this is the one x-axis, this is one y-axis, x-axis and y-axis. This is called the land supply curve. LS is nothing but land supply curve. This is called the land demand curves. DD is the land demand. DD is the land demand 1, land demand 2. So listen here, mom. So on the x-axis I am showing that land demand and supply. On the y-axis I am showing that rent of the land. So here at the demand of the land supply is OM. Land supply is there. So what is the demand for the land? DD is the this is the DD is the demand. DD is the demand. At this demand, the rent is OR. OR from here to here. When the land demand increases, D2 D1 D2 D1 land demand increases. So land supply cannot increase. Same supply is there. OM land supply is there. So land demand increases D2 D1. So that rent also increases. When the land demand increases, rent also increases. R2 R1 R2 R1. So R2 R1 rent also increases. Again land demand increases. D2 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 land demand increases. So here, but there is no change in the supply of the land. OM is there. OM supply of the land is there, but demand increases. D2 D2 rent also increases. R1 to R2 R1 to R2. So that rent also increases, because when the demand continuously increases, D1 D2, this is the this is the D1 D2. When the land demand increases but there is no change in the land supply, so the land supply curve is going to the horizontal vertical to the y-axis. So that's where rent also increases. R1 R2. So this is the scarcity rent graph. And another important concept of the rent, contract rent. What is called the contract rent? The price paid for the services of land, building according to an agreement. Agreement means contract, is called the contract rent. So what is called the contract rent? So the price paid for the services of land. For example, if you want to take that land as a agreement basis, so yearly basis, 6 months basis purpose. So land building according to an agreement. Before going to use that services, we have to make that agreement. So that agreement is called the contract rent. Okay, are you understand that what is called the contract rent? So the price paid for the services of land building according to an agreement is called the contract rent. For example, if you want to take the one car as a rent purpose, per day 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees, so that is called as a contract rent. So price paid for the services of the land building according to an agreement is called the contract rent. And third one, so economic rent. What is called the economic rent? So rent is a surplus arrived by deducting interest, depreciation, wages, reward for risk from gross rent. That is called as economic rent. For example, economic rent is 10,000 rupees is there. 10,000 rupees. So rent is arrived surplus, surplus arrived at by deducting. So what is the deducting here? Interest, for example, 1,000 rupees. So interest is there, so we have to deduct that. And depreciation means loss, 1,000 rupees is there, so we have to deduct that. And wages, employees, cleaning employees, security guards, salaries, whatever it is, so 1,000 rupees is there, we have to deduct that. And reward for risk, owners also facing that risk while they given the any property to as a rent purpose, like that 1,000 rupees we have to deduct that. So totally 4,000. So 10,000 minus 4,000, 6,000. Remaining amount is called as a 6,000. That is called as a surplus amount. Surplus amount. The 6,000 rupees is called as a, that is the economic rent. Okay, economic rent is nothing but rent is a surplus arrived at by deducting interest, depreciation, wages, reward for risk from the gross rent. This is the gross rent. So gross rent, 10,000 is the gross rent. Gross, among that gross rent we have to deduct that first one, interest, depreciation, wages, reward for risk. After deducting that, what is the surplus amount is there? 6,000. The 6,000 rupees is called the, that is the economic rent. And generally scarcity rent has the again two types. First one is the contract rent and economic rent. Scarcity rent, how many types? Two types: contract rent and economic rent. Second one, quasi rent. What is called the quasi rent? So, quasi rent defined by Alfred Marshall. According to him, it is the short period earnings of man-made capital goods. Short period earnings of man-made capital goods is called as a quasi rent. It is the short period earnings of man-made capital goods is called the quasi rent. It is also explained by the Alfred Marshall. Scarcity rent, who is the explain that? Alfred Marshall. For example, in villages, so if the colleges or industries are establishing, so automatically room rents also increases. For example, five actual before the establishing the colleges and industries, that room rent is 5,000 rupees is there, but after establishing that colleges and industries, automatically demand for the room rents also increases, so that will be increases 7,000 rupees after establishing the in a particular village or particular rural areas. So additionally 2,000 rupees charged as a rent, that is called as a quasi rent. Quasi rent is nothing but so short period earnings of man-made capital goods, that is called as a quasi rent. What is called the transfer of earnings? Transfer of earnings and earnings, for example, it is the defined by John Robinson. According to him, which factors of production may be earning in its present employment over that its present employment should earn next, alternative use is called the transfer of earnings. For example, listen here ma, one software employee is there, software employee. So present employment 1 lakh rupees is there, their earnings is 1 lakh rupees. Suddenly that software employee, they want to change their profession from one job, one company to another company, and they want to changing that. Afterwards he was getting the 1,20,000 rupees salary. What is the additional salary he was getting? 20,000 rupees. This 20,000 rupees is called as a transfer of earnings. Transfer of earnings. Transfer of earnings. So once again, isn't it, transfer of earnings means it is defined by John Robinson. According to him, which factors of production may be earning in its present employment. What is the present employment earning? 1 lakh rupees. Over that, its present employment should be earning. Next alternative uses is called the transfer of earnings. Alternative use. So again, he can change their job, one job to another job, or one company to another company. He get the 1,20,000 rupees. How much additional income is there? 20,000. The 20,000 rupees is called as a transfer of earnings. So this is the called as the concepts of the rent. So generally, the rent are three types: quasi scarcity rent, quasi rent, transfer of earning. Rent is the reward for the services of the land, machinery, and tools, buildings. That is called as a rent. Okay, so before that, if it is useful to you, please subscribe my channel, share and like my channel. Thank you.